Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the Esports Racing League Premier Series live tonight from Martinsville Speedway in Ridgeway, Virginia. James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, alongside Justin Prince and our producer this evening, Ryan Bauer, and JP. We are under the lights at Martinsville, which has been something that has been talked about for so long and so many years. Finally, here in iRacing, we get to see the paperclip under darkness.
Absolutely, and this is such a beautiful track with all the updates, especially with that lighting. I think iRacing got it right on point, especially with how the lighting is and how realistic it is, and keeping everything up to date for tonight's action. It's going to be a fun one tonight for these drivers and for these competitors here at Martinsville.
It should be so much fun to see how this pans out. First crack, I think that a lot of these drivers have ever had under the lights at Martinsville, and it doesn't matter whether or not you're a 2.50 safety rating rookie or somebody like a Zach Novak or a Jimmy Mullish who happens to be the pole sitter as it stands. You have won races in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, something that we have not seen here at Martinsville in sim, and something that I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch tonight. It's a bit of an animal, and always has been a bit of a bear in daylight, but this place under the evening sky, and especially in sim, since we're right about the time that we'd be racing at Martinsville in real life anyway, outside of the current situation of the world. But track conditions and temps should be about what you would think they would be in this race. It was originally scheduled for this Saturday night, May 9th, but as it stands, we'll run here on May 15th, 2020 in sim. We creep up on, call it 10 p.m. or so, but in either case, we look forward to showing off Martinsville under night sky as we get set to bring you tonight's starting grid for this ERL Premier Series event from Martinsville Speedway. Jimmy Mullish sets the fast time in qualifying with a time of 19.237 seconds ahead of Jose Solis Jr., who will start second. Brian LaPrade rolls off from third. Anthony Alfredo, owner and Grand Poobah of the Esports Racing League, rolls off from fourth. Fifth will be Ryan Kendrick. John Midget will start from the sixth spot. Alec Chamberlain begins this evening for seventh. Eighth will be Brandon McKissick. Cody McCauley will start for ninth. And 10th, JP, will be Lucas Graham.
Graham coming off a victory in the Sportsman's race. Eric Heater will start behind him at 11th spot, with Braxton DeWeese coming in tonight in good points paying position, looking to try and get a good result from row number 6. Colby Wells is in 13th with Alex Bell in 14th. Nick Olson, Greg McConey 15th and 16th, with Blake Reynolds deep in the field tonight in 17th. Alexander Crockett starts in 18th. Last driver to put in a time was John Dragonetti, with Jared T. Darling rounding out the top 20 via provisional.
RJ Williams, Steve Durham, and Nick Hughes are your final three starters in tonight's race. As we look at the track facts here, again, this is Martinsville Speedway, technically in Ridgeway, Virginia. We're about maybe 5 miles south of downtown Martinsville, right near the North Carolina-Virginia border. This is a 0.526 mile, 0.847 kilometer circuit that opened in 1947, and just a few years ago celebrated its 70th anniversary and will turn 75 2022. 12 degrees of banking in the corners, no banking on the straightaways. In sim, it's currently the default iRacing day, May 15th, 2020, just about 10 p.m. local time. We'll go for 100 laps, 52.6 miles, or 84.7 kilometers. We'll have 3 attempts on the green white checker if we need them. Current air temp is 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Track temp is 66 degrees Fahrenheit, so pretty favorable for a lot of these cars. Winds into the northwest at 4 miles an hour, 50% humidity in the air as we drop under night sky, and the humidity tends to drop just a little bit in these Virginia highlands, not terribly far away from the beginning of the Appalachian Mountains. And it is a long A for those who are uneducated, Justin Prince, so long as we make sure that the folks know that and they know about Martinsville's hot dogs and the kind of good races we're going to see here tonight. I think we'll be in good shape.
I think it's going to be an absolutely great race tonight. A lot of bumping and banging, and with the cooler temperatures, grips are going to be very high across this track. Keep an eye on how drivers enter the corners, how aggressive they be, and how quick they try and be when this green flag drops.
Jimmy Mullis will lead them to green and take off, and he goes. We're underway with this, the 11th race of the spring season for the ERL Premier Series. Mullis gets away clean. LaPrade to second. Jose Shoulders in third. Alfredo fourth. First side by side. Justin Prince is between John Midget and Brandon Cody McCauley for seventh.
And one of the main things to keep an eye on is if you lose the bottom, especially early on in the run, you're going to drop back in very quickly. That's just one of the tendencies of Martinsville. But should note the middle line did come in a lot of times when there was the higher downforce. It's going to be the question of how it plays with lower downforce and less grip for these cars in the corners.
As these cars are working with that new short track package, which is all about the power in the rear of these things and takes away a lot of the downforce that these cars had in 2019. Those first three have snuck off and gotten away, but Lucas Graham, Eric Heater side by side a little bit further back, and Braxton DeWeese, one of the drivers you mentioned just a little bit ago, second in points coming into tonight, also part of this battle, JP.
After the technical issues with the steering wheel for Jimmy Mullis just last race, that shuffled Mullis all the way back to fourth in the points and made the fight between 2 to 3 drivers, McKissick, DeWeese, and Alex Bell at this point. Separated by just 10 points, but the caution is out. Heater spins around in turn 3 and 4.
Heater goes around. He's the first Martinsville's casualty in this ERL Premier Series race. We'll take a look at the replay and see what happened. And looked like one of those classic Martinsville stack-ups. Nick Olson in the 24, who won the Dew Lights 175 at Talladega, just drives it a little bit too deep and catches that quarter panel of Heater, sends him around and up into the fence. A little bit of damage on the front end of that number 55, but not too much. And if there's one place where damage doesn't necessarily matter all that much because you're not traveling all that fast, Justin Prince, Martinsville might just be the place.
Yeah, indeed. And it's common to see those type of incidents, should note, though, as well, James, because you're fighting to get to the bottom, right? Some drivers elect to go with the slower arc, like we've seen. Others will try and dive it in and take advantage of you leaving space. It's going to be also interesting, though, how drivers handle pit strategy, because the tire wear does kick in about 15 laps in on a run. In green flag laps, Jose Solis Jr. with the hot drivers who are just up at the front, James, elected to sacrifice all the track position and take the tires.
Which speaks to just how important tire wear may or may not be, although you'll wonder whether or not he regrets giving up that track position. Will Solis, the man who qualified in P2 tonight, is going to restart no better than about 13th on the grid. So Solis with a little bit of work to do as they continue to cycle around Martinsville Speedway under caution. And as they cycle around under caution, we'll remind you of some of the other events that you can find in the world of iRacing this week. Tomorrow night on the Podium Esports Switch channel, it's the Icebox Pickup Throwdown iRacing Truck Series from Michigan International Speedway. The trucks take to that fast 2-mile circuit up in the Irish Hills at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the Podium Esports Switch channel and Eric Estep's Out of the Groove. Special pre-race is always on Eric Estep's Out of the Groove channel on YouTube at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Then Friday at 2 Punch, it's the Subaru Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama from the long course at Atlanta Motor Speedway at 6 p.m. Eastern on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. And then you can stay on those same places for Friday Night Thunder. What was Saturday Night Thunder gets its send-off right here under the lights at Martinsville Speedway at 8 p.m. Eastern Friday night before the grand finale to the NASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series from the venerable, historic North Wilkesboro Speedway. 3 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, and the Fox Sports app this Saturday, May 9th, in a very special occasion, I think, not only for everybody that's going to take part, but for iRacing and for the sim racing community as a whole. You don't need to talk too long about North Wilkesboro to understand the kind of history that it holds in the sport, and doubtless will be very, very special to see that place come back to life. As it stands, though, lap 10 is what we're about to come to. Mullis is going to lead the field back to green over LaPrade, Kendrick, McCauley, and McKissick as he jumps away, gets a good restart to the inside of Ryan LaPrade in the 19 machine. He goes down there. Big move from Cody McCauley to try to get underneath as they stack up behind and they start spinning around. Yellow flag is out. We didn't even get a corner, Justin Prince, before they started wrecking.
Yeah, 3 wide entering the corner off a start is not the smartest thing to usually have happen. But don't blame Deweese for his aggression to dive his way to the inside. The door was left open. He knows how important it was to keep up with Brandon McKissick entering tonight's race. It's just it ended up, of course, collecting everybody else behind him as a result.
We haven't had the chance to talk that much about the point situation, but it is pretty tight as John Midget was just sort of the meat in the sandwich who bounced up into Lucas Cram, Nick Olson, Blake Reynolds, Anthony Alfredo swept up in this incident in turns 1 and 2. Looks like one more car there. I'm thinking Jared Darling in the 1 also got caught up in this incident. But as we look at the points as they stand coming into tonight, with the knowledge that there is a drop for all the madness that we had at the beginning of the season, Brandon McKissick leads by 7 over Braxton Deweese. Alex Bell is 10 back of McKissick, so not impossible for McKissick to lose that lead for Deweese and Bell, and even Jimmy Momus, maybe even Nick Olson to jump into this. Those 5 mathematically still have a shot, albeit for Olson and Momus more of an outside shot at this point. But McKissick, Deweese, Bell, that trio really is the group that you'll want to watch this evening so far as the points are concerned, as we turn our attention next week to Charlotte Motor Speedway into the spring season finale of the Esports Racing League.
Yeah, and Charlotte's going to be interesting how that races as well, because some great races have taken place there, James, with the current package, and how many lead changes usually happen in those races in the first 10-15 laps. That's going to be a very important race for whoever wants to win the championship, because you never know what's going to happen at Martinsville. It's a difficult race to be the pre-ultimate round for a season because of those unknowns. So your goal has to be simple tonight, James. Take whatever points you can, try and keep up for the race win if you can, and keep your car clean enough to be able to hold on to your position all the way to the checker flag, because if you have to get any damage repairs done, you lose all the track position.
I think the interesting thing about Martinsville is that, in theory, you look at the way this place races, and you would think by shape it's an easy place to get around. But just with the way you have to roll back into the throttle, it's no surprise that we've seen some road course people actually have some success here. I think people tend to forget that A.J. Allmendinger, when he was racing for JTG Doherty Racing, actually had some of his best results outside of the road courses here at Martinsville, because it takes a lot of driving skill to make yourself quick around this place. You really do have to know how to control the throttle to get into good spots.
Oh, hold on a second. I think something's happening with Mullis's wheel again.
Potentially, as Jimmy Mullis was out in front of the pace car and then jumped ahead and decided to park it on the inside so he didn't end up in any trouble. But where does this put Mullis now that everything's sort of gone haywire in the setup of the number 46?
I think he's going to be able to get his position, yes, indeed, because he's able to only pull off to the side, didn't go down the pit lane, so he's able to retrieve his lead position back. But it looked like something happened with the steering wheel for a good second or two there, James, where it was jerking left constantly back and forth. Looks like whatever happened was just able to get it unjammed rather, just in time for the start.
Going to be very interesting to see if Mullis can avoid those issues in his Richmond Raceway Esports Toyota Camry as they jump off and go back to green flag racing at Martinsville in the ERL Premier Series. LaPrade drops down to the inside, a little bit cleaner start from everybody a little bit further back behind, and McKissick now to the inside of Ryan Kendrick to try and get fourth.
Yeah, and McKissick's got that preferred line again, and that's going to be key, keeping the bottom side until the rubber starts to build in and the tire wear starts to settle in. McKissick's doing a great job, but McCauley again is very impressive so far tonight, James. He's been a fixture ever since he's jumped inside the Cup car at the front of the field.
McCauley's been very, very quick, and very quick in the Sportsman Series that runs on Monday nights in the ERL as well, as McKissick continues to drive and try and chase down that 62. Braxton Deweese, who's right behind him in the point standings, is just 2 spots back of this as Deweese tries to hold off Eric Eater in the 55, who himself has done a nice job of rebounding after that first yellow flag of the evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Heater still having to deal with a bit of damage, but again, these cars can take a fair amount of beating on the short track specifically. It's just a concern of once you reach the end of the straightaways, how do the temps fall in terms of your air and oil temps and water temps rather. So if that gets too hot, you might have to back up and brake a little bit earlier in the corner. Heaters actually start to drop back, while other groupings of cars are still shuffling 16th on back with the fresh tires.
A lot of drivers here. Alex Bell, incidentally, is the first driver of the group that pitted right after that first yellow flag. He's up to the 9th spot, just cleared Blake Reynolds for that position. So now Bell will try and set chase to Colby Wells and see if the fresher rubber can help him get up towards the front, because remember, he's chasing both DeWeese and McKissick in the points. He needs a good finish in order to stay in contention for the series title next week in Charlotte.
Yeah, and he's been having a hard time getting through some of this traffic early on for Reynolds specifically as well, and some of the mix of drivers. But when you mentioned Bell, I think right now he was hoping it would be caution, break caution, then another group of cars would come in and he'd get the chance to stay out. It's just not worked that way, and now position up for grabs. Here comes Reynolds.
Here comes Blake Reynolds to the inside of the 15 machine of Alex Bell, that driver for Team Dillon Esports in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series with plenty of experience, and makes that move very cleanly down to the inside to take over that 9th position. Mulder's still out in front, though, by 1.4 seconds. Brian LaPrade trying to hang on here because Cody McCauley has not let the 19 machine go. And we can talk about how Mullis has been really, really strong with these high horsepower, low downforce packages, in particular with this Cup car. But we also, I think, need to talk about how Cody McCauley has just run amok of everything in the sportsman division on Monday nights here in the ERL, and has just made that his playground the last few weeks.
Yeah, before this week here at Martinsville, he had a dominant stretch of winning every single race he had entered in the sportsman's class. Every single time he's been in the Premier Series as well. Since then, he's been a fixture again inside the top 5 or top 10. This has been one of his best performances overall, though, even with that, James, here at the Premier Series level, because this is some of the highest running positions we've seen the 62 in a race so far.
McCauley hasn't quite had the success in this Premier Series, but he's got plenty of speed. There's no doubt about it. Maybe just needs a little bit of luck as Jimmy Mullis begins to encounter some of the lap traffic. And a little bit further back, Braxton DeWeese continues to stretch it on Eric Heater as Blake Reynolds all of a sudden, I think, has found the pace and started to get into his own rhythm and is beginning to bring that 3 car up towards the front.
Yeah, and remember, though, he talked about this a little bit before at Phoenix and was talked about a little bit at Dover, where tire wear and saving tires here is important for the rear tire. Last race, it was more so important to save it for the front tires. At Phoenix, remember, he burned that right rear tire nearly to the point it blew and was losing control. He's setting it aggressive in these corners and already is dancing around the corner exits.
Not a surprise here to see that as the tires get old at Martinsville, you will see these rear ends starting to bounce around a little bit more, because the way you have to roll into the throttle and the sort of threshold of the slip angle changes significantly over the course of a green flag run. Where you get on the gas at the beginning is not where you're going to get on the gas at the end, as Steve Durham is pinned up against the fence, and I believe is the reason why we are under yellow flag once more at Martinsville.
Believe so, because he has had a rough night. Lost control off the start in the first run. Nearly got lapped before the caution flag. This time was about to get lapped again by Moas and just completely blew the corner. Think just ended up not carrying in not enough brakes, too much speed, and just textbook slide into the wall. And because he was so slow on the top line, about 30 miles an hour, just on the edge of the racing groove, that brought up the caution.
Just enough to bring out our 3rd yellow flag of the evening, as all the leaders are going to come down pit road. And when you look at the pit strategy, it didn't really look like there was all that much that some of these drivers in the back gained who tried to stop. Alex Bell, Jose Schultes, the 2 highest of that bunch, but there were only about 2 or 3 cars that stayed out that they were able to pass. So I think, to me, that says track position is going to be really, really important over the course of this evening, Justin Prince. And who knows, we might see somebody go crazy and try and take 2 tires here.
I wouldn't be surprised to see someone try it, but it would be risky at 30 lap old tires for some of the drivers who hadn't pit the first time. If you came down on the first caution flag, absolutely wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 drivers elect to do it. In fact, we'll have to see if anyone tries to do it off the line here. No, indeed, it looks like for the most part.
Everybody on 4 tires coming out of pit road. I think that's the key. Not quite sure what's up with Jose Solis' junior car. The only one we're trying to figure out with regards to whether or not he got 2 or 4. But Jimmy Mullish is going to be your leader once again when we go back green flag race. I want to turn our attention back now to North Wilkesboro. We got the chance to hear Evan Pachoko's thoughts on that in the leaf filter gutter protection replacements iRacing series last night over on iRacing Switch channel. But JP, I want your thoughts on just what the return of North Wilkesboro means to you and how special you think that Saturday afternoon is going to be.
Well, I'll be honest, I was not born at the time when a majority of the races were at North Wilkesboro, but of course, reading a lot of the history and hearing a lot of the history and seeing some of the races from back in the day, it's always been a hot button topic and a track that a lot of drivers and fans love for the type of racing it put on in some of its most memorable races. I think it's an absolutely huge moment in sim racing and for all of iRacing to have that project come to fruition and have it now up to its climax now with the track being able to be driven on this upcoming Saturday. Nothing like it had ever been done before, and this opens up the opportunity for other tracks in other places to try and preserve history by trying to get the track scanned so iRacing can keep the dreams and memories alive of many fans.
So we get set for the restart here. That will come on lap number 37 of 100. Jimmy Mullis and LaPrade once again the top 2. All eyes still, I think, on McKissick and DeWeese for the points battle. That is going to be the one to watch if we're looking at a series champion as they get back under the green flag, and nearly a little bobble there a little bit further back for Blake Reynolds, who's done a nice job picking his way back out through the field after being involved in that second yellow, as it looks like McKissick got checked up on the exit of turn 2. That stacked up Jose Solis. It allowed Braxton DeWeese to come to the outside, although he drives it high and shoots the corner a little bit too far, bounces off the wall. Now he's side by side with the 13 of Ryan Kendrick.
He might be able to squeeze down if he can get the corner exit. No, just doesn't have the grip. DeWeese at this point, he's in a little bit of trouble. Needs to find his way back in the bottom. Keep in mind the 2 car. We talked about him. Can't confirm, James. He took 2 tires to gain his track position back.
So Solis will take 2 and try and take those 2 to the front in the number 2. If you like your numerology, we have it for you in spades here on Podium Esports coverage of the Esports Racing League. But as it stands, he currently runs in the 5th spot and is right ahead of that first real battle because they are going tooth and nail. And Blake Reynolds, again, you want to talk about experience coming into play here? Doubtless that all of his action in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series for all the years he's been a part of it, definitely helping him out here as he charges towards the front.
Yeah, and he's been bumping and banging that race car as well. Has a decent amount of damage on both the left and right front fenders at this point from some of the bumping and banging. But that's to be expected when you go to Martinsville. You expect to have at least a little bit of contact at one point in the race.
Just a little bit of contact at some stage. Rarely do you come to this racetrack and leave it with a clean race car. That's just not the nature of Martinsville. As Kendrick got a little bit loose, that's going to allow Reynolds to jump to his outside and clear the 13 machine. So you can move Blake Reynolds up to P6. And if you like that Coca-Cola machine, he's in pretty good shape at the moment. Might need another yellow or 2 to really charge towards the front of the field. But no doubt, Blake Reynolds has got pace.
He absolutely does. It's just a matter, again, of getting track position. Trouble off turn 4. Colby Wells just got turned.
Colby Wells goes around, and Alec Chamberlain also involved in that incident. As the yellow flag comes out again, we'll take a look at the replay and see what happened, but looks like simple contact once again. Big dive from Chamberlain coming into 3 to get alongside the 45, and then the 45 didn't have the greatest of lines through 3 and 4. That's where the contact comes, and then all of a sudden, they go around and stomp up the racetrack. We're under yellow once again.
And really, this is the disaster sequence for the past 2 laps, if you look back to Wells, because Breesy got shuffled to about that 14th spot or so. He got bumped and ran out of the way off the bottom the lap before, lost 3-4 positions. Then you have that happen again just in the next sequence of corners in the exact same side of the track and happened before. Welcome to Martinsville is all I can say.
About to say, pretty commonplace for the paperclip is, I think it might have been Braxton DeWeese that might have been pumped out to the outside just a little bit over those last few moments. And we cycle under yellow. We'll wait to see if anybody comes down pit road. But I do want to get back to the North Wilkesboro conversation, only because this is a special week. And it's something that we touched on, I think, for so many of the broadcasts, both on Podium Esports and on iRacing for the past few months, since we knew that it was going to make its arrival on the iRacing service at some point in 2020. And I think for those of us like me who happen to be native Northwestern North Carolinians at that, it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not you grew up in that era when they raced at North Wilkesboro 2 times a year. It's more about all the history that you've sort of grown up around. Something that when you walk into the gates at North Wilkesboro, as I've had the great pleasure of doing on a few occasions, you really do feel the history, and you get a really good sense of what it meant, not only to the sport, but to the community. Those races at North Wilkesboro, for a lot of folks in Wilkes County, Forsyth County, Davidson County, the counties all up towards the mountains, Watauga County, where Boone is right next door, everybody, it was the biggest event of the year when they came through. And the biggest point of pride of that entire region. So I think
there we go.
To bring it back to life is a very cool and very sort of different way to both link the historic past and the present of racing, and I suppose sim racing as well, as we now bring in Anthony Alfredo, who has just slipped into the broadcast. And Anthony, been a bit of a wild one for you. You were bouncing around a little bit earlier, but pretty cool stuff to see these drivers here at Martinsville under the lights for the first time.
Absolutely. It's super awesome. That's why I'm so bummed, but I guess that's the unfortunate part about technology sometimes. I've had some internet issues the last day, and I wish I could have raced tonight because I wanted to run on the updated Martinsville Speedway with my fellow competitors in the Esports Racing League. But it's cool to watch from above here in the booth and be broadcasting with you guys. So I appreciate your help with this. I blinked out on lap 2 or 3 or something, and everyone disappeared. And I was thinking to myself, this isn't good. But we'll watch the rest of the action here.
Figure you're going to take a few notes for Friday Night Thunder coming up in a few days as well off this action?
Absolutely. Maybe it's a good thing that I am up here watching now, because I can learn from some of these pros and all the drivers here.
I was about to say, are you noticing anything different now that you're out of the car that you didn't quite get the chance to see while you were in it?
Yeah, definitely a little bit, especially Jimmy Mullis in particular is just driving away. And it's hard to tell, actually, what he's doing. His line looks similar to others, but he's definitely doing something with the throttle input and his braking that's allowing him to gap himself from people, as we got a caution right here.
Got another caution out indeed. They've stacked up in turn 1, and it's Braxton DeWeese who's gone around right in front of Greg McConey in the 16 machine. Is contact between DeWeese and Nick Olson in the middle of 1 and 2. That sends DeWeese up and around and brings us under the yellow flag once again. So, yeah, Jimmy's an interesting one. And Anthony, since you've been on the subject, we talked about it a lot. Justin hit on the history. I hit on the significance to the community, but North Wilkesboro on Saturday surely has got a lot of meaning to you as well. In your words, how cool is it going to be to see North Wilkesboro in action in the Pro Invitational Series finale on Saturday, and what's that going to mean to you?
It's going to be incredible for the iRacing community as a whole, and it's going to be a historical moment in not only just the esports realm and the sim racing community, but the whole NASCAR community as a whole. To see current Cup Series drivers go compete at North Wilkesboro virtually will be so awesome. These races have been getting a ton of attention recently in the Pro Invitational Series, Saturday Night Thunder, and all these other leagues, including our very own here at the Esports Racing League. So it's going to be awesome to see them go to battle on a historical track like that. Many of them have never even raced there. So I think that's going to be unique. I'm bummed I can't compete with those guys, but I'll be racing from Friday Night Thunder here at Martinsville in the Xfinity cars. So as you mentioned before, I'm trying to learn some now that unfortunately I'm no longer in contention. I actually felt pretty good about running up front. I don't think I could have beat Jimmy or some of these other guys, but maybe got a top 5.
And let's not take away from the historical value of Martinsville either, and how cool it's going to be to race under the lights on Friday night. Any other week outside of this one, this would be the story that you get to run under cover of darkness. one of the most historic short tracks in all of racing that has years and years and years of history here, much like North Wilkesboro, which I suppose is fitting given that you look on a map, Martinsville and North Wilkesboro are only about an hour away from one another, maybe hour and a half if you stretch it. So pretty cool to see this place under the lights too, no?
Absolutely, and that's one of the coolest things is they just added lights recently, and to get that update here in iRacing so soon is really cool. And I think it's very exciting for everyone to be able to compete here throughout this week in some of the online races and in the leagues. And obviously Friday Night Thunder, I have an Xfinity race under the lights since we won't be racing there in real life, unfortunately, this weekend. So hopefully we can put on a good show, and I won the last one at Dover on Saturday night, so hopefully we can carry that momentum and go back to back here, as this could potentially be the last one for a little while here since we're going to be back on the real track soon.
You beat me to the punch on that. Yeah, for those who weren't paying attention and didn't hear the news, Anthony finally did break through and get his maiden win in Saturday Night Thunder at Dover. But that was off of a really strong week you had at Dover, to be fair, Anthony. I think, somewhere in the ballpark of 5 wins over the course of your fixed races coming up to that. So it was justified, I thought, because I could tell over the course of the week you had prepared for Saturday night.
Absolutely. I put in 20+ hours to every single one of those races, and it showed because I've run up front in every single one so far. I got turned leading at the white at Talladega, and we were able to come back at Dover and redeem ourselves and finally get a win, and which is pretty cool because the esports industry is very important to me. So to win a huge event, especially on iRacing and what the sim racing community means to me as well, it was very cool, very rewarding. And I know Jimmy Mullis and Zach Novak were pumped too because they've been helping me out a lot and teaching me a lot about iRacing. So their help was definitely valuable for me and has been, and I'm looking forward to them helping me again here at Martinsville.
I have a feeling you're going to lean on them a lot because you've got one guy who clearly is figuring out how to get around Martinsville and a lot of the short tracks in iRacing very well as we're back under green flag racing, and he's out in front by about 2 or 3 car lengths. And then you've got a fellow Connecticut native, Zach Novak, who also happens to be the defending champion of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. So if you're looking for tutors on how to get around this place, I don't know if you could find 2 better ones. And oh, by the way, they happen to be competitors in the Esports Racing League Premier Series.
Absolutely, and one of them is our current leader right now, Jimmy Mullis. I know he said that Martinsville is one of his favorite tracks. They both had a tough week in the Coca-Cola iRacing Series at Dover, and we were heading there. I said, hey, boys, I know you don't love Dover right now, but I'm feeling good about it. I'm on a string of wins right now leading into it. I've got a lot of momentum, and we've run well in all these races. I think this is the time we break through, as we have a caution on the backstretch. Big wreck.
Big wreck with the 45 machine, and a few more others swept up in this. Alexander Krunke is involved as well. Looks like John Dragonetti made a little bit of contact too down the back with Colby Wells in the 45. We'll take a look at the replay, see what happened here. I almost wonder if Jared Darling checking everybody up might have caused this, as the one machine got to the inside of Wells coming out of 2, and then actually, no, it was a little bit of contact between Darling and Wells that sort of set this off to begin with. And Darling, got to give credit to him, Anthony, pulling out the old school Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith paint scheme that Elliott Sadler ran back in 2005 when the movie came out. You want one of the more unsung paint schemes in all of NASCAR history? I have to believe that's got to be up there because that's a cool looking ride.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's a lot of great paint schemes in this field, and definitely some special ones. One I actually really love is Nicholas Hughes' paint scheme on the number 69 machine, because that takes me back to my Leaf Hawk racing days competing in limited late models and late model stock cars for that team, and Nick was actually my car chief. So it's cool to have him competing this series and see those colors on one of the cars in this field, because it kind of takes me back to my roots.
And another group that you can lean on and learn from here, Leaf Hawks Racing's got plenty of experience at Martinsville, especially in the Valley Star Credit Union 300, the late model race that happens here every September and is one of the biggest late model races in the country. They've had some success in that race throughout the years. So I guess you're just going to be pulling from all places to get some notebooks here. You've got plenty of resources to pull from if you need them.
Absolutely. And going back to what you said, it's just a historical track for all types of racing. It's classic short track racing. It's been around for a long time, and I know the fans were super excited to have the lights, obviously to have some night racing here. And you know what they say about racing under the lights, for some reason it brings out some intensity and some of the competitors, a little extra fire in their stomachs, and I think we're seeing that tonight here in our race in the Esports Racing League. But I think we're going to see it on Friday night as well, and throughout the week in the fixed and open setup races here on iRacing. So as excited as the fans were about getting lights on iRacing and racing at nighttime, that's as excited as the iRacing community has been about it for sure.
Also, while we're here at Martinsville, very important question for the fans. Hot dogs, with onions or without onions on your Martinsville hot dog? What's the pick?
I'm not an onion guy, so I'm going to have to go no onions. But if you like them, I'm sure it makes it even better.
All right, cool. I'm with you on that because I'm not an onion person either. But either way, it's still an amazing Martinsville hot dog. Yeah, definitely a big fan of those. And if you've never had one, you've not been to Martinsville proper until you have tried those dogs. One of the best concessions in all of racing. But again, also part of the throwback feel here. This is one of the oldest tracks in NASCAR, popped up right at the beginning of the sport and has carried on its tradition of great racing for over 70 years. And now we get to see it under the lights. It's absolutely perfect.
Absolutely. And looks like we're back green here. We'll see if we can get single file and run have a longer run here with these guys, because it's been exciting to say the least and very eventful. But I think these guys are looking like they're going to get a little bit more single file. I'm sure they're trying to hand the bumper to a couple guys, get a couple extra spots, but we'll see if they can run long here, because we got quite a ways to go. We're just past halfway here, lap 66 of 100.
Yep, working lap 66 of 100. Mullis still out clear. LaPrade and company. Blake Reynolds is hanging tough in that third spot. But really, JP, how impressive and how big for Reynolds to go to the inside of Brian LaPrade to take over P2. Reynolds has charged his way through this field in most impressive fashion.
Yeah, he has been so quick, especially on corner exit, and now a caution flag is out. Braxton DeWeese in his second incident of the race.
Bounces off C. Durham coming out of 4 and then bounces off the inside retaining wall. A pretty straightforward incident for DeWeese. As we'll pull up the replay and show you what happens. But for DeWeese, you look at the points impact in particular, JP. That's the one that I think jumps out to me. DeWeese has not had the best of nights. Brandon McKissick doing a nice job of hanging up the birthday boy who celebrated a birthday on a Monday, currently running in the 4th spot.
Yeah, again, about 3 wide coming off turn 4, and it's very tricky to even come off the corner in that position at Martinsville, let alone 2 wide. That car's taken a lot of beatings. It's going to be an uphill battle and going to need some luck now to be in a good position for Charlotte for the season finale.
Going to need to be a really, really strong run from DeWeese to make it happen. Meanwhile, Mullis, Reynolds, LaPrade, McKissick, McCauley, Eric Heater, I think that we need to talk about. He's had a good run coming back up. And Anthony, you saw all the madness in front of you at the beginning of this race and how Heater got sent up into the wall in 3 and 4. How about the 55 coming back up to P6?
Yeah, it's definitely an impressive run, because it's not easy to pass here at Martinsville. It's not like many other tracks where you can peek a little bit of left front underneath someone and try to scoot them up the racetrack, because they're wrapping around that curb so well, and that's why you see them kind of do that rubber band effect. You roll up on someone in the center and you have nowhere to go, so you got to check up. So it's very important you time your runs properly. So to see Eric up front again and drive all the way back up through the field means he's definitely got some speed, and he's got the proper racecraft to get around Martinsville in traffic well. So we'll see how that plays out for the end of the race. But what I'm also very excited to see is the Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers Blake Reynolds and Jimmy Mullis go to battle now together, starting on the front row for this restart, because Blake's worked through traffic tremendously well as also. So to see him, see if he can have a shot against Jimmy Mullis here, because Jimmy's been able to drive away, but maybe with Blake here, there'll be a little bit more of a battle.
Maybe. There might be a little bit more of a battle. But I think the big question, JP, is going to be whether or not Reynolds has burned off his stuff getting up to the front of this field. Very particular question I think we've got to ask ourselves, because he's worked hard to get up here. Wonder what he's got left.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting thing, because these drivers, you have to think about this too. The top 7 have already been on the set of tires, about 39 total laps, including some of the caution flags here. If they get another 10-lap run, that'll open up the door for drivers, I think, to come down one last time at this point. I think Reynolds, though, has the pace to keep up with Mullis. I'm not sure what Anthony Alfredo's thoughts on this, on what we're about to see here, because I think we're going to see a heck of a battle.
I agree, and like James Pike had said about Blake's Warren tires. That could play a factor here, and I'm very curious to see if tires come into play later in the run. If we do have another caution and someone's pitting, we'll see if that grip's going to help them, but we'll see what happens here as we start to go green soon.
And whether or not we actually get a chance to see drivers pit for track position if we get another yellow flag. Meanwhile, look at Heater down to the inside, tried to cross over the 62 of McCauley and got underneath him as McCauley goes sideways coming out of 2, and they wreck all down the back straightaway, and the yellow flag comes out again as they all get on the minors behind. But that all started with McCauley. You'll take a look and see on your replay what happened with the 62. Looks like he just sort of lost it coming out of the corner there, and that looked like it was entirely of his own accord. Just got on the gas a little bit too early, and then there was nowhere and nothing that RJ Williams could have done, that Alec Chamberlain could have done in that situation. John Midget ends up running right into the side of the number 37 machine. Colby Wells, I think, got some help for the 44 of Lucas Cram, JP, just to sneak around on the inside and duck down to the inside. I think he would have gone straight otherwise, but Cram almost sent him in the right way.
Yeah, Cram just made it through, but barely with all of that, even with the bump forward. Could add a little bit more front damage, yes, but man, it is tricky, remember, to get off the corner, especially on the once you're on this amount of worn tires and how much the rear tires are important to save here. Just looked like McCauley, after he missed that bottom side, tried to turn the wheel a lot, hit the gas, as you mentioned, too much, and bye-bye race car.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an interesting slide there. I was actually kind of surprised to see that happen. Cody McCauley's been very competitive running up front, and looks like it snuck up on him there. He definitely didn't expect it. As you mentioned, I think he had some wheel in it because he was maybe a little bit tight coming off the center of the corner. I don't know if he tried to use a throttle to turn it or what, but it just got away from him there a little bit, and unfortunately he just piled in there the whole field. There was nowhere really for anyone to go, but there was also a separate incident, as you mentioned, with Alex Bell a little bit further back getting into turn 1, but he held on to it, and then they all had their own incidents further towards the front with Cody McCauley.
Anthony, when we look at the track position versus fresh tires battle here at Martinsville, and which sort of school of theory you fall into, is there a preference in your mind, especially in this situation? And is there a point in this field at which you just say, you know what, if I'm this far back, I'm going to go ahead and jump down pit road for tires anyway, even if we only have about 20 laps to go?
I think so. It's a great question, and it seems that it'd probably be a fairly decent choice to make, just because fresh tires would play a role, and if you're further back with a lot of these damaged race cars, you could make up some significant ground. However, track position is very important here because it is pretty difficult to pass, so I think if you're further towards the front, you're going to have no choice but to stay out with the way this race has been going. Obviously, if it trends continue the way they have been, then you're going to want to stay out for track position, because you're never going to run long enough for tires to really make that big of a difference, and you might not want to put yourself too far back in the field, as that seems to be where most of these crashes are happening.
And of note, I think Justin Prince, top 5, all on 45-lap-old tires. Ryan Kendrick's got 33 on his. Alec Chamberlain's got 45. And then 4 of the next 5 behind Chamberlain, Colby Wells, John Midget, Lucas Cram, and Alex Bell, all on 17-lap-old tires. So Wells, even though he got caught up in that incident, if the damage isn't that significant, may not be in the worst of spots after all.
Yeah, I think he's in an okay place here. And remember, you have Cram, as you talked about, Nick Olson, who's been fairly aggressive on some of these starts on the bottom side all night long. This is going to be a fairly interesting restart here, especially with the discrepancies between the middle of the pack on the tires and the older tires up the front again.
Well, you know Coca-Cola is going to be loving this, seeing their 2 cars on the front row right here. So we'll see if they can stay up there as Blake Reynolds slides the tires a little bit coming to the green.
He slid the tires tremendously and had that wheel cocked sideways just to make sure that he hung on to it. But he manages to get down behind Jimmy Mullis. So first battle goes to Briar LaPrade and Brandon McKissick. And there's Eric Heater down to the inside again. Alec Chamberlain also to the inside of Ryan Kendrick, trying to take over the 6th spot. Yellow flag, though, in the corner as Steve Durham's gone around again. And with a little bit of help from, I believe, a few folks there, Durham actually loses it by himself and then leaves nowhere for Nick Hughes or Cody McCauley to go. They just sort of pile right into him. But how many times have we seen that at Martinsville, JP? More often than not, if you're going to get stacked up like that, it tends to happen coming out of 4, I feel like.
Yeah, that's the second time, too. Durham has struggled to get on the brakes, it seems, on corner entry in the exact same spot. It might come down to just something with where he's timing up the brakes or his brake bias with how aggressive and how hard he was going into the corner there.
One of those cases where you can get on the throttle too aggressively, you can get on the brakes too aggressively, you can spin yourself out either way. Anthony, best way to avoid all that and the best way to sort of roll into the throttle, can you put words to it, describe it, and give us an image of what that's like when you really nail it and figure out how to get out of these corners?
Yeah, absolutely. So Martinsville is unique because it's different than most. Obviously, it's got concrete corners, and they're fairly flat. They're sharp corners, why this place is called the paper clip. So you come down these long straightaways carrying a lot of speed, and when you get into the corner, you're very hard on the brake, threshold braking pretty much, and when you're threshold braking, you cross that transition from pavement to concrete, it's easy to get what we call wheel hop, where the rear tires actually lock up on the way into the corner. So getting your brake bias set where you want it properly and allow yourself to get into the corner hard and aggressively, but without locking those tires up or backing it up too much to where you get hit from behind is very crucial. And once you get that done, you got to roll the center, take your time, and can't pick up the throttle until you're pointed. But once you are pointed, you can start feeding it, and once you know that it's going to be straight off the corner, you can usually get in it pretty aggressively. But now with these older tires, the drivers aren't going to be able to be as aggressive on the throttle or getting into the corner because they won't have as much grip in the tires to brake hard. So they're going to have to be careful, and I think that's why we're seeing some of these cautions happen.
The contrast between the sort of stab of the throttle that you could get when the tires are fresh and the general roll that you have to work with when you come back out after, say, 40, 50 laps on these tires, you start working your way towards the end of green flag run. That's the biggest transition, I think, that I've noticed here in all the years at Martinsville that I've seen racing. And then there's also the fun bits and pieces of just hanging in the throttle and making sure that you hold the center as well, getting through these corners. I think a lot of people tend to forget that it's at that point where I feel like you really do make up a lot of time, and you can shave off a tenth or two if you manage to hit the center of the corner right.
Absolutely, and that's the most difficult part, is doing the same thing over and over again and being consistent, because it's not an easy track. So whoever can run those fast, consistent, smooth laps every single time is going to be the fastest. I think that's what we're seeing Jimmy Mullis accomplish, and even Blake Reynolds as he's driven his way through the field. So we'll see if they can continue that and see if we can get another little bit of a green flag run in here, hopefully.
Coming at 15 laps to go this time by. Mullis and Reynolds take off. LaPrade got a pretty good restart, though. He's down to the inside of that 3-car already as they fan out a little bit behind this group going into one. But LaPrade and Blake Reynolds side by side for P2, and that is everything Jimmy Mullis wants to see, Justin Prince.
Absolutely. The more these two cars fight, the more Mullis gets the chance to run away. Remember, Mullis ran away by a tenth of a second from LaPrade before. Looks like Reynolds just wants to get to the bottom and refocus.
Reynolds just trying to find his way behind LaPrade. Meanwhile, Brandon McKissick putting together what could be a championship deciding run tonight if he can hang on here to the inside of Eric Heater, looking for that 4th spot when you consider the trouble that Braxton DeWeese has had tonight. And Jimmy Mullis is a little bit further out of the points than he'd like after the wheel issues kept him from racing at Dover last week. A big night for McKissick if he can hang on.
Yeah, this would be absolutely huge, especially if it sticks the way it is. If you're him, no mistakes. Just keep it calm, keep your position. Just don't mess up the corner entry, especially with these older tires at this point, because he's in a great spot, as we talked about, especially with DeWeese in 18th position and Alex Bell deep in the field in 10th.
Really good spot for McKissick. I'd almost say he might be gaining as Blake Reynolds smacks the wall coming out of 4 that time by. And they're all losing time to Jimmy Mullis. Last time by, Mullis ran a 19.4 to LaPrade and Reynolds 19.6. McKissick was actually faster than the 19 and the 3. But main case here in point, Mullis is driving away with 10 laps to go this time by.
Don't forget there's a drop week in this series as well for these drivers for their worst finish, and Jimmy has only missed one race, which was Dover, after he actually had some technical difficulties with his wheel in the Coca-Cola iRacing Series race and still didn't have it fixed for last week's race at Dover. So another win here would be huge for him, and to be able to stretch that points lead heading to the final race at Charlotte Motor Speedway next weekend of this spring inaugural Esports Racing League season would be huge.
It'll be very, very big. We'll throw him right back into the championship conversation as Mullis continues to work his way around and continues to outpace everybody else here at Martinsville. Coming across the line, 8 laps to go for Mullis, and last time by again, he picked up another 10th on this group. So the battle, Justin Prince, might be between McKissick and Blake Reynolds. We know Reynolds loves to drive hard, but also has had a tendency to burn off his tires in some of these races. Makes me wonder if he might be vulnerable to the 87 over these final few laps.
Yep, potentially, especially since he's really sliding up to the on-corner exits, it seems, and starting to miss a little bit on the corner entries and having a lot of slide off. Keep in mind, too, the Nexus Esports machines. A lot of the drivers are known for their ability to be strong on the short tracks. McKissick is showing that speed tonight once more here at Martinsville.
McKissick with plenty of speed, a solid run. He'll take this finish, but certainly wouldn't mind the extra spot if he can get it. But the yellow flag comes out again as Greg McConey goes around in turn 4. And this will, if it doesn't quite set up a green-white checker, Anthony Alfredo, we're going to be pretty close to it.
Absolutely, and it's been pretty interesting to see them get single file there, and they were able to move each other around on that restart, fall on the line, gain a couple spots here and there. It was nice to see aggressive driving and then be able to keep it rolling. It was very exciting, so we'll see if we're able to do the same thing on what's going to be very close to a green-white checkered, if not a green-white checkered, as you mentioned, because it's going to be more intense now, so it's not a string of 15 laps to go where everyone's going to settle in line for a little bit. It's going to be crunch time here to the checkered flag.
And Justin Prince, if you're Jimmy Mullis, how much do you hate seeing a yellow flag at this point? He pretty much had the race in hand, and now he's going to have to fend off all these drivers who will have one more restart and one more chance to potentially just go full send into one of these corners and try and move that 46 up the hill.
Yeah, you're a little bit disappointed, but remember, as long as he gets a good start, I think here, he's in a good position because he's been able to pull away by 3-4 car lengths each and every start by the end of the first lap off the restart. That's been how quick he has been tonight. But remember, they're on the oldest tires they have been on all evening long, and we've seen it a couple times. They've been slipping and sliding on the corner exit on that start. It is very difficult, mind you, to start on old tires at this racetrack. Anthony, your thoughts on that? Because we've seen a bit of slides a couple times for Reynolds specifically on the outside.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is those older tires we talked about earlier, but it could just be the outside lane. There's less rubber laid down. Everyone's been running the bottom lane, and we'll see if maybe there's something out there for LaPrade. Maybe his car is going to like it out there, and he'll be able to roll the top for a little bit. I don't know if he'll be able to roll around Jimmy Mullis as the race leader. He's going to get a jump on this restart, but maybe he can hold off Blake Reynolds once again. But if not, be interesting to see if Blake Reynolds could get that charge even with those slippery tires, see if he could get back to Jimmy Mullis and race for the race win.
We've got slippery tires. We've also got a slippery surface in points because of these concrete apexes in the corners. Anthony, can you elaborate a little bit more on the difference between pavement and concrete when you race it and why that transition, especially on corner entry, is so key at Martinsville?
So that's a great question. So the biggest thing is transitioning from the pavement to the concrete is there's a little bit of an elevation change, a little bit of a bump crossing it. I believe the biggest part of the bump's getting into 3. It's a little bit more than turn 1. However, the main reason is the grip level change. The concrete's got way more grip than the pavement. It's a lot smoother, and the tires like it. So when you cross from the pavement where you have less grip and you're standing on the brake pedal to get it slowed down, and then you hit the concrete with all that grip, it's very easy to lock up the tires I was talking about earlier. So that's what these drivers are fighting.
We may have an issue here for Brandon McKissick, who is currently stuck, and we're waiting to see if we can get any notification from race control as to what's happened to the 87. But it looks like connection issues for McKissick, which may well end his championship hopes right here. As we come back to the restart, it will be our first green-white checker. There goes Jimmy Mullis to the race lead once again.
Everyone slipping and sliding, both in the bottom and the top that time on some of the concrete. But Mullis having that perfect start again, getting to the exact same car lengths he's had every single start coming to the white.
All Jimmy Mullis, 1 lap to go here at Martinsville in the ERL Premier Series race number 11, the penultimate race of the spring season. And Mullis has just been able to pull away enough to get out of the clutches of Brian LaProud, who's got one more opportunity to try and send it off into turn 3. He won't be able to get there. Jimmy Mullis will come out of turn number 4, and Jimmy Mullis will claim the checkered flag and win at Martinsville in the Esports Racing League Premier Series event at this famed short track. And oh, by the way, Justin Prince win number 3 of the season for Jimmy Mullis, which puts him tops amongst all ERL Premier Series drivers up to this point.
It's just been such a dominant campaign for Jimmy. He's been very consistent, running up in the top part of the field each and every night. And that Coca-Cola energy machine going to be very energized, I think, Anthony, as well, with this checkered flag.
Absolutely. I know Jimmy's pumped, especially after missing Dover last week, to come out and lead every single lap here at Martinsville and hold off a lot of these hard-charging drivers on numerous restart attempts is a big deal, especially on the green-white checkered. And it's impressive that all these drivers made it to the end. I'm excited for them. They were able to race it out there, make it to the white flag, and ultimately race to the checkered flag together. So now we're heading into the final race of the spring season, Charlotte Motor Speedway. We go from short track racing to another intermediate, so that's going to be interesting. We'll see if Jimmy can hold him off again as he does a massive drift all the way through turn 3 and 4 backwards.